Did you know that there are foods that are linked to cancer? In fact, the consumption of such food in large quantity frequently may increase the chance of one having cancer. Today, KAREEM'S Clinic is happy to present to you foods that may lead to cancer. Now, one thing that is worth noting before we look at these foods is that cancer thrives best in an inflamed body. If your body has inflammations, then cancer is likely to develop in such kind of body. Usually, the diet that you eat, if it is more acidic, then you risk having more inflammations, and that is the reason why if you have an issue with your stomach, most of the time it is inflamed. A lot of time you say you have acid in your stomach. It therefore goes without saying that eating foods that are acidic in nature or foods that have acids in them may as well lead to inflammation, and this inflammation is a very high risk of having cancer. Which foods therefore are acidic? I want to demystify one myth that a lot of people do have about acidity and alkalinity of the body. There are products that are sold and you are told if you drink this product, it will alkalize your body and your blood, so it will reduce the chances of you getting cancer. Let me correct something there. The blood can never be alkalized. The blood can never be acidified. The body on its own has its homeostatic features to correct alkalinity within the blood. There is no one point that you will say this blood is so acidic or this blood is so basic. The body has its own mechanism. Whether you eat a lot of acidic food, blood will be regulated. But now the problem is, as the body regulates the pH or the acidity and the alkalinity of the blood, the rest of your body parts would suffer. The kidney would suffer, some organs would suffer as a result, because the body has to make sure that the internal body environment is almost constant, and that is what we call homeostasis. However, within your stomach, for instance, if you eat food that is alkaline or acidic, there are parts of your body that will swell within the stomach or within every other part of the body or any other part of the body. So we are talking about general inflammation within your body that now will attract cancer. And we are not talking about blood acidity that will attract cancer. Please, if you are fond of using alkaline or alkanizers to alkalize your blood, I would want to tell you that your blood will never get alkaline. The body has its own way of doing that. But if you want to alkalize your stomach, fine, take the citrus soda, and just to mention but a few. Food number one that is linked to cancer: red meat. Red meat is linked to cancer, and red meat is beef, lamb, pork. I would also want to bring that to your attention, that pork is red and not white. A lot of people do think pork is white meat. No, it is red. It has what you call myoglobin, and it is not grouped together with fish or chicken, so it is red. It looks white uncooked. Sometimes even when cooked, it looks white. But the truth is, it is red meat. So if you're avoiding red meat, avoid pork as well. This red meat, if you eat a lot of red meat, then it would lead to colorectal cancer. It would also lead to prostate cancer in men, and it would also lead to pancreatic cancer. Now, high levels of saturated fats are found in red meat, and that is one reason you are not supposed to use it. If saturated fats is in plenty, it is a risk to your health, because it would lead to acidity and in turn lead to inflammation, and that inflammation is what we really want to avoid in the body. The red meat also has what we call the heme iron. That heme iron damages the walls or the lining of the colon. Therefore, it can easily lead to colon cancer. Now, how much is too much? If you are consuming 90 grams of beef daily or pork, then you need to reduce it to less than 70 grams if you want to lower your chances of bowel cancer. In fact, usually we say that you can always have a plan on how to consume your meat. Now, this meat, too much of it is dangerous, but a little bit of it is healthy. But if it has the same protein that chicken has, why don't you then use chicken and fish instead of red meat? Because it is linked to cancer. That is number one. Number two, grilled vegetable. Now, grilled vegetable, that aspect of grilling goes to high temperatures. These high temperatures on vegetables leads to production of chemicals which are very dangerous. These chemicals, just to mention but a few, are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. I'm just mentioning a few that are easy for us to master. There are more that we can talk about, like heterocyclicomines. Now, these chemicals are linked to high risk of cancers. So if you have your vegetable, kindly don't grill it. That vegetable going through very high temperatures will change the chemical composition of the vegetable, and will also produce very dangerous chemicals at high temperatures. That is what we are talking about. Now, what does this lead to? This leads to bowel cancer or colon cancer. It also leads to colorectal cancer. So it is very, very important to note the type of cancers that we are talking about here. Colon cancer is the cancer on the large intestine. Colorectal cancer is the cancer that affects both the large intestine and the rectum, and that is very common. Nowadays, if you wake up in the morning and your stomach is having issues, the first thing you'd think about is ulcers. Ulcers. People talk about ulcers. In our next video, we'll actually talk more about that, so that you could be having colorectal cancer and you think you have ulcers, and you treat ulcers for 2 years only to realize that you have been treating a wrong disease. Instead of grilling vegetables, why then don't you just steam them over a shorter period of time? If you add vinegar, the marinades, if you add them, then they will always reduce the chances of you having cancer. And that is very, very important for us. Next, food that we want to talk about is refined sugar. Now here, when we talk about refined sugar, a lot of people are a victim. But the big question sometimes they ask, I meet people who ask me, Kareem, I've I've been consuming sugar. I'm 60 years old. I've been consuming sugar. I've never had cancer. You're just lucky. You are just lucky, or probably you've been doing it the right way, but you don't know. A lot of people do think just consuming sugar can lead to cancer. No. I want to say that sugar is not just carcinogenic. In other words, sugar is not known to cause cancer like that. There are things that happen after you consume this sugar that may lead to you having cancer. Very much important to note. The sugar alone, when it is refined and processed and you drink it in terms of soda or candy, what we Kenyans call sweets, that sugar can lead to breast cancer. It can also lead to colorectal cancer. And you realize everywhere we go through, you get the colorectal cancer. It's very common and people die of it without even knowing they suffered from it. Ovarian cancer also is linked to refined sugar. Now, what does sugar do? Remember, inflammation. Sugars will lead to inflammation of your body, and that is what we don't want. So this inflammation is what attracts cancer. This inflammation, remember, sugar is acidic. So that inflammation attracts cancer. And again, sugar, when you consume a lot of sugar, there'll be the production of too much of insulin. Remember, insulin converts glucose, excess glucose, into glycogen for storage. So the more you consume sugar, the more your insulin levels go up for that conversion. And when the insulin levels go up, what happens? That promotes growth of cancer. Now, instead of using refined sugars, the normal sugar that we use in tea, we can always use honey. Honey is natural sugar. It is not refined. It is not processed. There is nothing done to it. And actually, most of the time, make it natural. How will I survive? Somebody is asking that question. Without sugar, you can survive. You can survive without sugar. Take whatever you want to take without sugar. If you can't afford honey, or if honey is out of reach, there are people in areas that honey can never reach, always go without sugar. But if you have to consume it, then do it in very little quantity. Kindly reduce your sugar levels. I would say, if I was supposed to advise you on what amount of sugar to consume, one teaspoon per day if you have to. Remember, there are foods also, natural foods, like the starch, cassava, just to mention but a few, that once digested are broken down into sugar, similar to the same sugar you want to consume. I mean similar in function, but not similar in composition. So you don't have to eat the normal sugar. It's not necessary. The next food that I want us to look at is the white flour, or what we call the wheat. Now, the white flour can raise your risk of colon cancer, colorectal cancer. The two are a little bit different, though quite similar. Colon only affects the upper part, that is the large intestine, while colorectal affects both the colon and the rectum. That cancer is very terrible. It can also lead to cancer of the kidney. So what are the foods that we are talking about here? White bread, spaghetti, pastas, just to mention that group. Could you limit consumption of white bread because it is refined? Could you limit the consumption of spaghetti, pastas in general? It is very important that you limit that. White flour is heavily processed, And there are a lot of nutrients that are stripped off, especially the fiber. Now, this will increase inflammation in you and acidity in you, thus increasing your risk of cancer. So avoid white flour. Flour ni unga ngano. Next, the fifth, canned foods. You know, canned foods are always an easy option for us. You can't cook, you can easily go to the supermarket or the stores and pick canned foods and consume them. Yes, it is, the food itself could be okay. You could be consuming the right food. But the canned foods, the lining of those canned foods contain a chemical known as bisphenol BPA. This chemical interferes with your hormones, and that interference leads to high acidity in you. Remember, the canned foods have got preservatives and additives in them. And now with the additives and preservatives, you can easily be affected. If you have to eat food that is canned, then can you go for glass jars? You know, the ones that are canned in glass jars. That will be better for us. Number 6, hydrogenated fats. Now, there is a problem with the hydrogenated fats. Somebody is asking, is vegetable oil hydrogenated? Yes, vegetable oil is hydrogenated, like the margarine or margarine. I wouldn't want to mention particular brands, but generally margarine that you apply on bread to make it softer and sweeter, that one is very dangerous. It has what we call trans fats, and these trans fats are very bad cholesterol. They can raise cholesterol and result in health complications. Now, anytime we talk about cholesterol, or what we call LDL, low density lipoprotein, then that environment is acidic. Inflammation is likely to happen. If inflammation happens, cancer is attracted. Apart from just that, hydrogenated oils can also cause heart diseases and even strokes. If you have to replace such oils, then go for olive oils, though very expensive, avocado oils, or the nut oils. So that is very important. The 7th food that we are talking about is the dairy products. Dairy products, the milk, the cheese, the yogurt. There are no strong evidences to show that these foods cause cancer directly in humans. But what we are saying is limit their consumption so that you lower the risks. Evidences are not strong, but there are risks. And cancer is a disease that scientists are still learning. So anytime one thing is pointed at today as a major cause of cancer, tomorrow it would be different. One surest cause is HPV virus, that one we had talked about. But these foods here, limit them. Limit them so that just in case you don't risk having cancer. Prevention is actually better than cure. So, dairy products contain hormones. These hormones, like the estrogen. The estrogen promotes cancer growth. So that's why we are not supposed to consume them. Also, there are fats within the dairy products that lead to inflammation. And once we talk about inflammation, anything that causes inflammation can easily cause cancer. Look here, in as much as dairy products may never cause cancer directly, but the fact that they cause inflammation, that inflammation can attract cancer. Please get that right. So when do we talk about inflammation? We talk about inflammation when you overuse it, when you drink too much of it. Why would you drink too much of milk daily, too much of yogurt daily? Just do it in moderation. Just little by little. Sometimes go without. Number 8, alcohol. Alcohol can lead to cancer of the liver. It can also lead to colorectal cancer, also breast cancer. The body takes in alcohol. Now, once you consume the alcohol, there are chemicals that when the alcohol is broken down, these chemicals are a byproduct of the process that breaks the alcohol down. This chemical is called acetaldehyde. Now, acetaldehyde is known to damage DNA, thus increases the chances of getting or having cancer. Let me explain that a little bit. DNA, we have what we call mutation. The changes in your genetic makeup can always lead to cancer. And that is where we find too much of growths and tumors, just to mention but a few. In fact, drinking hot, extremely hot beverage, if you go to a coffee shop or a cafe or Java and you drink very hot coffee, chances are, if you are together with other risks, you risk suffering throat cancer just because of the hot thing. Why? Because that too much heat can interfere with the DNA along your throat, and anything can happen in terms of mutation, that genetic change, that abrupt change in your genetic makeup. So when that happens, the cells around that area may never recognize they are a threat. They may recognize they are supposed to overgrow. Similarly, alcohol produces, the moment it enters the body, the breakdown of alcohol will now lead to production of chemicals that can easily damage your DNA and lead to many more problems. Women should not take more than 1 bottle. And is there anybody who is supposed to take 2? None should take 2, not even men. So do your alcohol in moderation, knowing the risks that it comes with. Number 9, processed meat. Processed meat, very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. And the group of processed meats like bacon, hot dogs, sausages, lunch meat. There are those ones who take the lunch meat away. And those ones are very dangerous. Why? They have what we call the nitrates and the nitrites. These ones form cancer-causing compounds. The sodium, if you look at these processed meats, they taste so salty. Now, the sodium in them and the saturated fats in them would lead to inflammation of the body. That easily attracts cancer. Please know that acidity leads to inflammation, fat lead to inflammation. All these things are related in that manner. So instead of going to eat processed meat, why don't you just eat whole meat? You can't go for lean meat, fish, chicken, just to mention but a few. But when you are feeding on chicken, when you are eating chicken, remove the skin. The chicken skin is also not healthy. Fish is okay. The 10th food is fried foods. A lot of fats. And when we talk about fats, we talk about acidity. And when we talk about acidity, we talk about inflammation. That is the most important point to note. Always consume foods that do not lead to inflammation. Fried foods increase your chances of getting different types of cancers, like the ovarian cancer, the kidney cancer, the pancreatic cancer, so on and so forth. So, frying changes the composition of foods. There are processes that, like polymerization, hydrogenation, oxidation, just to mention but a few. There are a lot of things that happen while you are frying food that in the normal, we feel like the food is just being fried. But what changes the taste from the raw food to the prepared fried food? There are processes that have gone through, that the food has gone through. So those processes are very dangerous, and the temperature is also very high. You remember when we talked about high temperatures? Now, these high temperatures would lead to what we call acrylamide. Acrylamide is a compound that is formed when this food is fried at high temperature. So it is that compound and even other more. I just gave an example of one that can increase or rather lead to inflammation, that in turn leads to acidity and attracts cancer. Those are 10 foods that we have talked about. The bottom line is, not every food you consume will lead to cancer. In fact, these foods, all of them consumed in good quantity and correct frequencies, would never lead to cancer. Making sure that your body is not acidic and it does not have inflammations is the best thing to do. I don't mean you don't eat these foods. If you can have substitutes for them, the better. But if you have to eat them, please do it in moderation. Do them at a lower quantity. That will help so that you don't have or acquire cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.